Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, Mir, Ni Hao, Buenos dias, Buenas tardes, Hesaje, Akwaba, Velkomen, what up though? So, I got dos cosas, y potpourri, two things, and then many things. So we'll see how we get into the many things. But first we share the two things. So jumping right into, oh wait, hold up, this is Café Mélangé. I don't even doing these joint. Whatever. Café Mélangé. This is week numero 41. Haha. We continue. We at it, rolling. The wind is blowing. The soleil is showing. What do people be knowing before they go in? All in, fall in and out, about, shout, all that, no doubt. So, all right. First cosa, primero. All right. So youth and the rebellion, quasi rebellion. This, that, and the other. I'm without a phone. I'm without Wi-Fi where I stay. I am without. I abstain from being on social media. I definitely don't have a TV. Don't watch news. So the way I learn about things going on today, the current events, by talking with people. And so, in talking with people around my village, and additionally, I hear about the recent events. I might have mentioned this a week ago. But people continue to talk about it. So I'm told that there's certain things that happen here in the Cuyahoga area. Actually, certain things being planned, at least perceivably previously, in the village where I stay, UNI village. So I'm addressing this, and these are some thoughts to share. I actually shared with a young brother and sister yesterday, with the intention of sharing it today, but when it comes up in convo, I share it as it is. So this is other than the world premiere, but it is. So anyways, what is it? It's my recommendation, my advice, my insight, my counsel that I share for young brethren who are frustrated and additionally with conditions. I have this inclination of giving my credentials, or whatever that is. Even when cats do that, it's like those who know don't say, those who say don't know type of situation. But that being said, simultaneously, when somebody does say something, it's like, hey, who is this cat? But without getting onto it, I have a certain amount of experience with activism and additionally for a long time. And even just studying the game. But I'll let the truth speak for itself. Here it is. Yo, cats, young brethren particularly, who want to raise up. You want to do it militaristically. Do you think you have the guns? Do you think you have the tanks? Do you think you have the organization to go up against the system? Not just the domestic national U.S. system, but the global system. I think you got that. When cats are causing damage and destruction, there's very strong, legit reason to be frustrated. Well, kind of, sort of. I mean, in my spiritual teaching, there's no reason to be frustrated, but there's a lot of bullshit that's going on to precipitate being frustrated. So that's no doubt. But it's a question about going about it, how you go about it. You think you got the guns? You think you got the tanks? What are you doing other than just getting your rocks off in destroying buildings and things like that? Maybe getting some badges, merit badges, some little bit of a street cred, activist cred, or whatever else. All right, and then what? What's the long-term plan? General, captain. So militaristically, if you think that if you got the guns, you got the tanks, and you got the organization and the discipline, then you're the system itself. But that's one thing. And then like politically, cats who talk about policy change. changing the laws, getting this, that, and the other? Do you think you have the political organization? Do you think you have the numbers, the knowledge, the savvy, the diplomacy to negotiate, again, not just domestically but internationally, because that's the nature of the game. It's been that way for generations, and you can't even deny it. You can't even like pretend otherwise at this point. So it's not even just a question of like American US policy. It's like you got to know how to work the world. So you got the politics, you got that game to be standing up and this, that, and the other. Then economically, do you have the businesses? Do you have the money? Do you have the currency? Do you have your own currency? Do you have the fields from which to grow the crops to feed your villages? And additionally, if you're going to stand up economically, what do you got? Going against the system. Going against the system. So my point is that on each of those fronts, you're highly leveraged, highly disadvantaged, highly unfavorable conditions to be going antagonistic. So that's something to be mindful of. Now, I will say what you have in favor, and extreme favor. Many things actually, to be honest, but two things in particular. One is energy. You got lots of energy. Like the way up here, when everybody, the elders, the adults, and everybody else are older than yourself, is way down here. High energy. So the consideration is how you utilize that energy, how you invest that energy. Is it again just getting rocks off on the weekend, and destroying some buildings additionally, and deflating the community, deflating the support that's behind you, the energy of those around you that got to go to work in those buildings the next day? Is that how you're going to spend the energy? Or are you going to find additional, increasingly productive, fruitful, straight up ways of investing that energy? So and you got way advantage, because the cats who have the guns and who have the tanks, who have politics, who have the money and the economics, they don't have the energy, and they are in desperate need of the energy, and are selling and doing all these other different types of things, is in fiending for that energy. So when we begin to understand the nature of what is in our auspices, what we bring to the table, it's a matter of making decisions, wise decisions accordingly. So energy, huge amounts of energy, and that says it in and of itself. Some people might need a further articulation to describe like the tangibility, like, so what energy, what does that have to do with it? Think about the universe. I mean, think about just the nature of life. Everything needs energy. These machines that are going out transporting things back and forth, how the system operates, it feeds off energy. I mean, you can listen to John Trudell, a native brother, uncle, who talks about energy and how the system feeds off energy. That's in an esoteric sense. That's in an ethereal sense, but it's also in a personal, like biological sense. People need energy, and when people become enveloped in the system, people become very sedentary and susceptible to disease. And additionally, because there's little movement, there's little energy, and it's unhealthy. And so there's a need of having people who do have energy, and I don't mean to get into details about that, but that's where like hired servants come in, and additionally the friendly ones, the ones that we can control or whatever. That's a sarcastic projected first person plural utilization. But anyways, there are lots of different ways that those who are frail of energy gain energy from others to live, just to live. And so, anyways, I'll leave that for the second thing. Is truth, honesty. Youth have yet to do dirt to the same degree that elders and adults have. Youth have less blood on their hands. Have yet to go to war. Have yet to cause bloodshed and to incur the blood guilt, the vengeance, the blood feuds within one's own community, but also particularly, especially with other communities, China, Iran, Islam, Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, all the isms. Youth have less blood directly on their hands. Youth have fed off of it as growing up as elders based upon what parents and constituencies have done, but in terms of directly, don't have as much. So because of that, and it's not just a matter of warfare and killing, it's also a matter of oppression and enslavement and all the nasty torturous things, rape and everything else that comes from that, sexual exploitation, all that. Youth have less guilt. So because of that, youth are increasingly encouraged and strengthened, right, to be honest, to be truthful, to call things out, to say, yo, that's wrong, yo, that's wrong, yo, that's extreme. I was about to get into my Cali swag. Hella power, and hella meaning not hella, but hella meaning heaven. A little bit of Run DMC there. But the point is, like, yo, truth is extremely powerful, and it's like light when the truth shines out. The bugs scatter. Particularly the bugs that don't like the light, the night bugs, the cavernous bugs. So that's extreme power. And the thing is, the irony, the painful irony is that when youth like go like tear up towns and this and the other, that's depleting that truth. And it's like getting a chip in the game, but a very, very like negligible, dubious kind of chip in the game. So truth and energy. Now, that in and of itself might, again, seem very intangible. Like, yo, what are we going to do with truth and energy, yo? Well, I'm seeing cats run right now. I'm seeing cats walk. I'm seeing cats work. That's energy right there. You can put that energy to work. And you can also withhold the energy when cats ain't paying right. And when cats ain't acting right. You can withhold that energy. Now, all right, see a little bit of that, if you see that. But doing it right, just doing it honestly. So, but here's my recommendation. With that energy and with that truth, learn your stories and tell your stories. Because when you learn your stories, your ancient stories, over 100 years old, that your elders know, that your elders abide by, when you got that right there, you are better situated in the hierarchy, in the chain of command, because adults are bosses. Adults call shots. Adults make the rules, enforce the law, and additionally, and they employ people to do that as well. So that's the adults, and the bosses of the adults are the elders, the cats who've been around, who are retiring, but they got their mind control going on the different fronts and everything else like that. So the bosses of the adults are the elders. But guess what? The bosses of the elders are our ancestors. Our elders have bosses. Our elders got to play by rules. And so our stories, our ancient stories, are that legacy of our ancestors, the guidance of our ancestors, the little words and teachings and communication, conversations with our ancestors. That's what our stories are. And so when youth, with the energy and with the truth, learn these stories, guess what? Youth got some sway, got some leverage, even some authority in dealing with elders and dealing with adults, and dealing with youth and other children, credibility, and also getting wisdom, learning the principles, learning the stories and how to explain the stories. So rather than being preachy and this, that, and the other, you just say, yo, here's a story. And I ain't the best example of that. So I know a few stories, but anyways, I continue to work on it. Actually, I was supposed to open up with the story today. I didn't think of the right story to share as a preliminary to this joint, which is, I'm a student as well. I'm a teacher, I'm a boss, but I'm also a student. And I got many bosses too. So anyways, storytelling. It's very accessible. You can go online, you can find the stories. You already know a lot of the stories, at least the phrases, the characters, the names. You can learn them better and learn them by heart. Learn them off rip. Learn the details. Learn the backstories. Learn like the side stories and everything else like that. Learn the stories of other cultures, because again, the way things work today, it's international. You got to know something about other countries. You got to know something about other cultures, other nations, other languages, other traditions, just to function. Because putting bread on the table involves working with cats who speak Espanol or speak Chinese or I was going to flex some Chinese, but I'm still working on that too. Who know Arabic, who know Hebrew, who know Ashanti, who know English, and additionally Hindi, all them joints, even Russian, Germanic, Scandinavian, Portuguese, Japanese, all that. So you got to have knowledge about some knowledge about that, and part of that knowledge involves knowing the stories, knowing how to. When you negotiate with cats, you got to be able to like. And I'm getting a little preachy with my you got it, but it's beneficial. It behooves you. It's beneficial for you to negotiate effectively with another company or with another party, to know something about their background, like what's important to them, what are the rules they live by, what are the principles they live by, what are the stories that they live by, so that when you get into the negotiating table, you can explain the nature of the proposition in the language, in the literal language, but also the ideas, the principles, the stories of the other side of the table. So storytelling is powerful within one's own community and standing up, and then storytelling is also powerful in working with other communities, and with the energy and with the honesty is increasingly compelling. So that's the recommendation. It's also intergenerational. It's intergenerational recognition and cooperation, and that strengthens community, that strengthens communication, that strengthens cooperation. So across generations, from the children to the elders, adults, youth, and additionally. And that's part of the long-term objective. So that's the recommendation I share for cats who are frustrated and who are inclined to decline, whatever. I'll also share this. One of the frustrations that I have in recent conversations is the taking things up with the police. Like the police, they're enforcers. I've utilized the term foot soldiers, and that's a little bit derogatory. But the point is recognizing like the police ain't the ones making the policies. The police ain't the ones, like, it's the law. It's the law. And the ones who are responsible for the law ultimately are people in a so-called democracy. And particularly people who call up the popo when they need some protection. And so it's like you're getting rocks off at the cats who are at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to the social hierarchy of Western society, at least on this continent. And so it's not even going to the police chief or the mayor. It's not even matter of going to the politicians, because the politicians are puppets. But it's a matter of just understanding the nature of the game and finding out what the objectives are, and divesting as much as possible from the things that are harmful, that are hurtful, investing in the things that are healthy and productive, and then co-vesting with those who are investing in the same things. And so one of the frustrations I have is when people who are on the front lines of the activists, this and the other, who are antagonistic towards the authoritarian constructs, but simultaneously are espousing a politics that is acquiescent to those politics. It's basically not saying, yo, we want our own nation, this and the other. It's a matter of like, yo, we want a bigger part of the pie. Yo, we want greater inclusion. Yo, we want a change in policy. And so that's very frustrating, because it's a subservient type of politics. It's a subordinating type of politics. It's like I've utilized the metaphor of spoiled children complaining to adults. I don't apply that to this situation. It's somewhat applicable, but what is increasingly applicable is a legit child, a righteous child, complaining to abusive, corrupt parents, but still staying in the same house. If the parents are corrupt and doing whatever, get out the house. And that might seem like harsh, love it or leave it type thing, but in a sense, kind of, sort of. At least in an ideological way, and in as much of a pragmatic way as possible. Because right now, cats are going back to Ghana. Cats are going back to Nigeria, repatriating to West Africa. Cats are repatriating, strengthening connections with China and Japan and Korea, and even moving to Singapore. Cats are repatriating to Europe. Cats are making aliyah. Cats are leaving conditions that are increasingly adversarial to invest and build. Are you looking for the entrance? The side door might be open, so people have gone back on the west side of the building here. If you go around here and walk down the street or walk down the sidewalk, there's an entrance on the west side. All right. There might be also a number there that you can call and they'll let you in. So, cats are making moves. Cats are not tolerating adversity, and cats are not tolerating intolerance. We got choppers. Cats are not tolerating intolerance. And so people have options. It don't cost much. Whatever that stimulus thing is, if it's still going on, $1,000 or whatever. I don't even know if the plane fares are going on these days. Some people are flying, but back a year ago, whatever, particularly a few years ago, that's a one-way ticket. Even that's a round-trip ticket to Africa. You could probably find a deal to get to Shanghai with that, or additionally. So that's halfway around the earth. It don't get much further away than that. The land of the Warren Jerry, whatever. That's a stimulus package month away. It's doable. Now, when you get there, what's going to happen is how much does it matter to you? That's the question. Might you be locked up in immigration or whatever else? Maybe. Might you find some a repat community that provides some support? Maybe. Might you find a teaching English or some other thing where you can work and make a living? Maybe. The question is, how much is it worth to you? So that's that. Now, there are also cats who are leaving this joint but while staying here as well, living in an intentional community, out in the boondocks, out in the desert, out in the forest, or wherever on this continent and around the earth. Eco villages, the intentional community, the fellowship of intentional communities. There are places all around the continent, in every province of this continent, that has intentional communities that are based upon some type of political ideology, even if it's just like sharing in kumbaya. There are different degrees of radicalism and everything else like that, but that's another option. So that's an immediate option, that's an eventual option, or whatever. So, I mean, this whole destroying stuff, protesting, it's subordinating politics. It don't do much. It don't do much. What has it done in the past 50 years? What has it done? What has it done, yo? Seriously, what has it done? If anything, it's deprived cats from the motivation of doing things that are increasingly productive. Because what advances have been made as an activist front in the past half century? To be honest, in the past half century, pretty much the things that could be thrown up are like Spike Lee as a filmmaker, and hip-hop artists, particularly hip-hop artists who share some type of conscientiousness. But even then, what has protesting done in the past half century? Serious. All right, let me get off that. All right, it's subservient politics. If you got if you recognize how truly heinous the system is, because I don't disagree with that, get off it as much as possible. I'm living off the grid at this moment, carrying my shit and dumping it off in the nearby sewer grate because the toilet is suspect. I ain't calling the cats who have keys to the doors, because they're aligned with cats who do nasty things like rape and torture. So that's not an option. In terms of money, that's got the faces of slave owners on it. So I do my best to stay away from that. So that's part of the economic discipline, the economic protocols. So there are ways that I can get money in this, that, and the other. Ways I can do the plumbing. I could gank stuff or whatever. I can look online, see what I need to do to fix the toilet, and then gank the parts myself or whatever. That's suspect. That's not righteous. That's criminal type stuff. That's subversive type stuff. And so when it's righteous, it's a matter, if it gets to that point, it being righteous, it's a matter of going to the store, like, I'm taking this, deuces, and that's it. But it ain't to that point yet. So in the meanwhile, I do what I can, and what that is collecting the excrement and depositing it directly in the sewers. It ain't pretty, it ain't nasty, but guess what? I'm learning in the process, and being challenged and everything else amidst that. But that's part of the nitty gritty of off the grid. If cats are that serious, and this, I ain't saying be like me. I ain't saying I'm the best or I'm do everything like I do. I'm just giving you an example of like serious, just being mindful of like whatever technology you don't understand, like the computer, the Wi-Fi, whatever. If you abstain from knowing how to do this yourself, how to put together a computer yourself, how to get all the parts together and construct those parts together, manufacture those parts together, put it together, how to build a Wi-Fi system and the infrastructure Dolo style. And if you abstain from knowing others directly who know how to do that, but you're still relying upon that, you are relying upon people who believe in a way that are different from you. And not only that, but you're like, in certain ways, you're leveraged. You are influenced by those individuals. And that's the nature of the game. And so those individuals are also leveraged by people who do things that they don't know how to do, like talk to people, love, and this and the other. And that's a little bit harsh, but I mean, that's part of the balances. So that's the nature of the system of economics and politics and social and even religiosity. And additionally, so if there's disagreement with that, you might want to try the side door on the side of the building. Okay, I think this door is locked. But I think this door is locked, but people have tried the side door.
Okay.
And the side, it's your door, or there might be a number that you can call that lets you in. All right, you're welcome. Cheers. So, that's how the system works. It's people cooperating with each other who don't know how to do what they need to be done on their own. So they rely upon others, and they do their best to rely upon others who are like themselves. And so that when it comes to solidarity and cooperating in competition, there's increased cohesion. And so obviously the system here is racist, classist, and genocidal, and it favors certain individuals. Actually, it doesn't favor anybody. All right, how you doing? I think that door is locked, but you can try it. The door on the side has been open. People have, yeah.
So
there might be a number you can call in if they don't. If
okay.
not. All right, you're welcome. So the system actually works against everybody, just in different ways. But for those who are increasingly motivated to get off that, get off it, and find something different. And it's obviously it's difficult to just like cold turkey drop it, but it's like recognizing, what do we need and what do we want, and how are our wants getting us enveloped in shit that we don't need. So when cats don't do that, when cats get frustrated and don't give up what they don't need, that actually thing works. Then cats get frustrated. They're mad at themselves, first of all, but then they blame in others, and then they take it off on others. So I'm getting a little bit. I'm digging in a little bit now, and maybe I'm avoiding the next joint that I have to share. So, anyways, the point is, get off it and get on it. It's as simple as that. And it may be like partial, like making steps, incremental steps, small steps, initial steps. Sobering up, get off the drugs, get off the intoxication of the system. Even the media, the pretty women on the screens. I'm going to talk about the dudes. The flash, the bling, the swagger. All that's drugs, yo. It's like if you think about culture, like the dope game, like cocaine itself as a plant in the hills of the Yanomami and the Inca. Yo, it's medicine. It's utilized as medicine. It's a way of dealing with the high altitude breathing and heart conditions, and additionally, it's medicine. But when you chop it down and use it for recreational purposes, it's a drug and it's addictive. I haven't tried it myself, but I hear tell. And then when you cut it up for even further, then you got crack. It's cheap, it's inexpensive, and it's highly distributable. It's bullshit. Culture is the same way. When you take our stories, when you take our drum, our music, and everything, yo, that's medicine right there. Energy, truth, right. Ancestors, right. That's better than gold. It's greater than gold. That's healing right there. But if you chop it up, cut it down, and infuse it with bullshit, naked women, dudes with guns, and flashing fast cars and everything else like that. That's drugs right there. And cats getting high off them drugs, high off that culture, doing it for the culture, right? Yo, I'm digging in. So let me be mindful and pull back a little bit. So gotta get back on my frame of stream of thought. Sobering up, I was talking about sobering up from the system. That's also another one of the functions of our stories. Yo, songs are important in doing that as well. The challenge with the songs though is this: one, cats will be like, oh yeah, I love music, I love all types of songs, but the things that cats are listening to ain't the healthiest. It's the cut up version, it's the cut down version. So that's one thing. And also, like, a lot of the songs that people are listening to are in a language that are other than what the people's ancestors speak. So when I talk about songs, particularly in this context, I'm talking about ancient songs in original language, and building accordingly. So that's part of the healing. That's part of the solution, and that's what's very much accessible at this moment. And that's part of what's involved in the incremental steps. Learning what those songs are. I still have a lot to learn about that. So it ain't got to be cold turkey. It ain't got to be overnight. It ain't got to be immediately at this moment. But recognizing what you need, and what you want. The difference between the two. Letting go of the things that are just niceties, the want type stuff. And when you do that, you become increasingly liberated from the system, less angry at others because you're less angry at yourself for relying upon others that you don't like. Not even that you don't like, but that don't like you, or that ain't doing you right. So when we rely less on those cats, we become much happier. We become much less angry. And when we're less angry, we're able to think better. And then recognize how we get what we need from cats who are increasingly supportive of who we are. So that's part of the process. Identifying what our priorities are: food, clothing, shelter, education, communication, utilities, basic utilities. And then when we utilize these things, use it for a purpose. Be mindful of it. And it may be easy for me to say because I'm without children at the moment. So I know for a lot of cats who are parents that have children, particularly young children, it's like, gotta give them something like to keep them busy, to keep them pacified, this, that, and the other. Again, my advice is to do it in the way that's increasingly agreeable. Keep it simplistic. Again, anything that's beyond what one's understanding is of how it works, how to make it, to be extremely mindful of how you utilize it. and finding options that are increasingly accessible, that you do know how to make, so you're less reliant and less subjected, subordinated to the people who provide those things. So anyways, that's the recommendation. And my point for like getting back onto this joint was just emphasizing the subordinated politics. When it's a protest thing, when it's like looking for like a greater policy change within the system, and additionally, it's children complaining to corrupt parents, to rotten parents, but staying in the same house. It's difficult to get out the house, and the kids be like, "Oh, what you talking about? I'm sitting in the shadow of the house at the moment." Kind of, sorta, but still, a little bit beyond that as well. All right, double talk. What I'll say is this: I just emphasize what I've been saying. Divest, invest, co-vest. It ain't got to be cold turkey, because even in repatriating to another nation, and this might seem like I'm undoing what I just said, even in repatriating to another country, even in moving into an intentional community, it's still a matter of working with the system, the global system, the earth system, in one way or another. And the nature of the system is oppressive, regardless of what government or what feigned or facade of a government is doing. Just the nature of humanity is predatory, and so that part of that predatoriness is oppression. So what we can do is be optimal, maximize the ways in which we are righteous, maximize the ways in which we are happy and liberated, and continuing to build, continuing to improve, and continuing to prepare the next generation in that tradition. So, all right, did I answer that question about my own perceived duplicity and being in the house as well? Well, here's the way I describe it. I had a metaphor to distinguish between subordinated politics and autonomous politics. Both disagree with the system, like the status quo, the convention. The subordinated politics look or pursue an increasingly advantageous position within the status quo, within this convention. And autonomous politics works towards establishing an autonomous convention. And so that's pretty much the difference. So the things that I'm doing and things that I'm involved with collectively with others are along those lines of autonomous convention, and taking incremental steps in that actualization, rather than being acquiesced with a greater segment of the standing convention. So the aesthetics, I have to have a wind guard now because it's picking up. The aesthetics may be similar. It may seem like, oh, wait a minute, he's part of the system, he's living on the grid, or he's attached to it, and additionally. But one, there's the emphasis of declaration and a mindfulness of that. And also, two, there's a discipline that's involved in being off or working to get off the standing convention. So that is part of the distinction. I'm going to get to the second thing. The second thing is, I got to get to this joint before I get to the second thing. The second part of this joint, I have some additional recommendations for youth, but this is for the youth who want to go into the system, who want to be part of convention, who want to rise through the ranks or stay in the ranks or whatever of convention. Here's a recommendation. Particularly for those who want to be as nice as possible whilst being part of the system. And that's, I think, a lot. My recommendation for the youth who want to like be different from convention is to focus on truth and energy, and then to learn and share the stories, ancient stories. So that's that. The recommendation for those who want to work within the system, who want to like be comfortable and just be as nice as they can be, but still like be cooperative and part of convention. Here's my recommendation. One, convention is changing, and that's actually one of the additional things that I have to share at the end of this joint. But that's one thing, to recognize like the way things have been for even like generations, even like things haven't been this way for centuries, but the way things have been for generations, particularly for years and years and years, you can expect that to be very different. You can expect that to be fundamentally different from this point on. So that's one consideration. You're welcome. But regardless of how things change, how things evolve, here's a consideration. Here's the recommendation. To identify your daily discipline, the things that you do on a daily basis that make you strong. Prayer, meditation, sleep, yoga, exercise, reading, work, study, whatever that is, particularly as you get into the work field. Whatever you do on a daily basis that strengthens you, to be mindful of that and to do that, to be religious about it, and also to be increasingly intentional in maintaining and strengthening your relationships with those who are also doing it as well, to see who's doing it too, and to connect accordingly. So that provides stability, because, as I mentioned, things are always in a state of flux. Things are always in a state of change. Sometimes it is increasingly perceived as chaos, but it's always in a position of change. When you look at, particularly on this continent, civilization, the buildings right here, the buildings I'm looking at the moment, 10 years ago weren't here. There were different buildings here. Literally, the buildings are crumbling and raising, and the people affiliated with the buildings, the job positions, the hierarchies and everything are also fluctuating. People moving to different companies, people moving to different locations, people moving to different careers. Everything's in change. So, and that's when things are hunky-dory. And that wasn't meant as a euphemism or oxymoron, an entendre or whatever. But even when things are perceived as like prosperous and everything, things are in flux. So there's fear with that, uncertainty, because people are worried about their position, what they're going to have, what their stake is, and how that's going to be like secure. If other than just for one's own self and one's own lifetime, for their progeny, what they're going to provide as inheritance to their children, and additionally. So, amidst all these conditions, particularly at this moment, the recommendation is identifying the things that make you strong, that you do on a daily basis, and who does that too, strengthen the relationships accordingly, and be mindful, recognize the peace and like the well-being, the healing, the healthiness that comes from that, to appreciate, respect that, and treasure that, to invest within that, to nurture that, so that when you are encountered with decisions, options, challenges, threats, and additionally, you have stability and calmness to deliberate. You have your foundation of discipline to like rest upon, and to recognize, okay, you know what? Actually, this situation ain't as bad as it might seem. Option A is this, option B is that. You know what? We actually don't even need A at this moment. It's okay to go with B. So whatever happens, happens. Or making a decisive decision. Okay, there it is. A, or whatever. When you have a daily stability within your daily discipline, and your relationships, your communication, your interaction with others is stabilized amidst that discipline as well, that strength comprehensively, to help provide security. So when the boss comes in, oh, we need you this. Well, no, I got obligation. Oh, well, we're making cutbacks, and we gotta worry about redundancies and this and that. I understand, but this is a priority. So, and a lot of times when cats face or impose those ultimatums, they're just trying to get a read. They're trying to read how much the person's going to be cave in, acquiesce, or whatever else. And when they see somebody's got stability, oh, wait a minute. In some ways, they're scared about that. In some ways, they like that. I was going to say they get a little bit excited about that. I'll have to be disciplined about my entendres, but it's actually appealing. Like, wait a minute, who's this cat? Where are they getting the strength from? Why aren't they scared about me? We need cats like that. So, it's a matter of having that type of strength and stability beyond just affiliation with a job, affiliation with an occupation, affiliation with a class, a house, a neighborhood, and those type of credentials, but a discipline that's practiced repeatedly, continually. So anyways, that's the other joint. So that's for cats. So cats who veer towards the rebellion. Then there's the energy and honesty and focusing on stories. For cats who veer toward the sellout, discipline and relationship amongst those who practice and share the discipline. Now, then obviously, as there always is, there's the middle ground. So for those who are finding their middle path, guess what? Honesty, energy, storytelling, and then also discipline and relationships. So that's what I got to share. That's numero uno. Numero dos. We in the shade. We got it made. Energy is still up there. Still got battery going on. And storage was just cleared. So we got days and days, or at least hours, to go, available for recording. And actually, it's probably not hours, because batteries probably be out in about an hour or two. Anyways, second thing. All right, this one's going to be a little bit further challenging, a little bit further controversial. Right? All right, how you doing? The door might be locked unless you're working there. I don't know, but yeah. I felt the necessity of giving the disclaimer because he's approaching the door, but he might actually already know that, be a worker. So. Anyway, all right. So the second one. Here's the thing: the diversity game. So there's a certain statement that I'm leading to in this little spiel, in this modest spiel. It's a difficult statement, and I'm being mindful of the lead up to it to explain the logic to it, and then also the follow up after it to explain why I'm sharing the purpose, rather than just being salacious or whatever else. So I begin by addressing the diversity game. So the diversity game, basically we can look at civil rights movement here on this continent, and the changes, the policy changes that are made. And so basically that the prize, and I have to be mindful of that word because we're still working on the prize. Actually, we got the prize, but the prize ain't something that's bestowed from oppressor. The prize is something we've always had, that we always have. We just got to keep on valuing. But that's another combo. That's every combo. But anyways, all right. The award from the civil rights movement was affirmative action, and affirmative action set up basically the diversity game. And that's what I'm referring to it as, the diversity game. And one of the reasons why I'm being mindful of this whole thing is because I know many dear brethren who are directly involved in the diversity game. And so I have to be careful. I can seem somewhat maybe trite or even disrespectful or dismissive when I talk about things. Sometimes I have to be that way just to articulate it, because there's such a culture of like massage and avoidance and everything else like that, that I have to, like, as somebody, just cut it and be like, just direct, be like, look, take off that band-aid and blah. So but simultaneously, particularly in this joint, like, I have to be mindful of that. Yo, there's brethren that are dear, smart, intelligent, even beautiful, and even righteous brethren that are involved in the diversity game, that are depending on the diversity game, and so I have to be mindful of that. So that's part of like the elongation. All right, so the diversity game. Going back to just the candid description. So this is basically what happened. Initially, over half a century ago, affirmative action provides opportunities for certain individuals, particularly of African ancestry, amidst the Immigration Act, and because that significantly has a significant influence in it as well. But particularly, again, half a century ago, in the black-white paradigm, affirmative action provides opportunities for people of African ancestry to rise up the ranks in certain ways in conventional institutions, particularly university, lightweight, and jobs in institutions. And so that's like the first generation of affirmative action. And it's not just some benevolent kind of like, oh, we're all together. It's actually extremely strategic. One, first of all, it's not a matter of it takes away energy and organization away from a nationalist paradigm and a separatist paradigm. So instead of having like a black nation, like a state like Alabama or Mississippi or Georgia and the land of the Creek, instead of one of these states like just seceding from the United States and becoming a black sovereignty, a black nation, there's migration, and the migration precedes the civil rights movement, but even amidst the civil rights movement and afterwards, there's migration of Africans who are the majority population in each of those states, if I recall, if my information is accurate. Even by a democratic vote saying, okay, we're going to secede, and there it is. Even at that point, jobs were made available in the North, factories, and additionally, so that there's a mass movement of people of African ancestry from the South, and reducing the population, right? And as a result, becoming increasingly not just ethnic minorities, but political minorities in the North, not having as the same kind of connections, not having the same familiarity and everything, and thus being increasingly dependent upon the power constructs in the cities, particularly. So that's one thing. Now, the affirmative action provides people of African ancestry on this continent to rise up somewhat in those ranks. And in that first generation, it may be considered people, and this is just a very pedestrian, I won't say pedestrian, a very layman's running, because my research on this is very modest. People are welcome to do the research and say otherwise in terms of the facts, but it may be well considered that the initial opportunities are provided to men, because that's the way society is during that period. The majority of the people who attend university, very much men, and people who work, in corporations and the big businesses, particularly at managerial level, are men. And so affirmative action during the initial stage, predominantly, perceivably, benefits men. But this is the thing. In those type of situations, men are challenged because men are confronted with corruption, being wine, women, and wealth, and that's just the nature of corporate life. And when the men acquiesce, succumb to those type of temptations, all right, when men succumb to those temptations, then men become beholden to the people who provide those niceties. And so, even when the men who receive the affirmative action opportunities get placed into certain positions at corporations, at universities, and additionally, when biting of the fruit of the employer or the institution, they're in the pocket now at that point. And so now, in order to stay in that position, they have to like be the voice, the puppet of that institution. This applies to myself as much as anybody else. And that's where the decline of the efficacy of affirmative action kind of gets traction, because now it's just a matter of a person, a front, a person of a certain demographic, being another mouthpiece for oppression. Now, it gets a little bit further involved, because what usually happens is that the person has connections, the person has colleagues, and additionally, and even beyond the colleagues, the person has like mini political machines that the person supports. So before perhaps even getting unduly leveraged or excessively leveraged by the oppressing entities, corporations, or whatever, the person gives out favors and establishes a certain reputation, and the company wants the person to do so. All right, how you doing, bro? All right. The company wants a person to do so because that's the nature of business as well. And so the person establishes a mini political machine. Might be able to get somebody into a university with a recommendation. Might be able to get somebody a job, particularly as a laborer or something else like that. And so now they have favor with the community, and they can utilize that in a favorable way with the company, with others, and additionally. And so there's a little bit of a political machine. And so when the person gets leveraged, the political machine gets leveraged as well. So now they change it up. Sometimes there's somebody at the door, but yeah, there's a west entrance right there. Yeah, if you go around here, the sidewalk right here is on the side.
Okay.
All right, bro. So yeah, I'm not gonna tell people the door is locked up, because 2 people just went in out of that door, and and I don't want to be like, oh, I'm telling people. So anyways, I just try to help. Sometimes you just get in the way. Anyways, continuing on, when the person gets leverage, if they're in the position of the hierarchy, and they ate some of that fruit, and now they're getting called to account for that, called to task for that. It's not just the person at that point, it's the mini political machine. So now the mini political machine has an interest in that person staying in power. So that's how it works. But it's extremely modest in terms of the actual mechanics of it and the breadth of it. But that's how it's worked for a while. Particularly half a century ago, the first generation of it. Now the thing is this: obviously the person after a while retires, moves on, and so there's the next generation. In the succeeding generations in the past half century, there's an increasing trend such that rather than dudes, and this is part of a larger macro social experience, but with feminism, but rather than dudes being the primary recipients or the major recipients, it may be considered that women are the majority recipients. Women are increasingly the recipients, if other than the majority recipients at this moment. So, particularly speaking of women of African ancestry. So when we look at affirmative action, equal opportunity, and the diversity game itself, with the diversity game just being an extension of affirmative action. Women of African ancestry women of African ancestry have a heightened position within the hierarchy of the diversity game, and women in general, but particularly women of African ancestry. Now, and so because basically men, including myself, have gotten corrupted, and that's not anybody else is doing except our own. So I'm not shirking the responsibility. It's just a matter of like men have been corrupted, as all men have been corrupted. It so happens that when it's men of in the domestic situation here, corrupted means political, or effectively equates to political disenfranchisement. So within the domestic political construct. So by and large, men generally are very co-opted or excluded, particularly men of African ancestry. Now, additionally, how you doing, bro? All right. Additionally, I'm just going to describe the diversity game at this point. It's been a process of evolution, of gradual development, but this is where it is at this moment. There's a scenario when companies, how do I put this? I'm striving to be delicate, but also to be honest. All right, I'll begin like this. So there's an ancient practice. There's an ancient strategy amongst an oppressor, and that ancient strategy is expressed or is practiced within Mitzrayim in Egypt, but we can look towards lots of different civilizations that do the same thing, which is this: when there is a distinct community within a society that is identified as being oppressed, what the oppressive regime has done is kill or castrate physically or politically the men, and then keep the women, empower the women accordingly. So that's ancient, and that's going on today. When we look at development policy, if you're trying to get in the building, are you trying to get in the building?
Yeah, I'm trying to mess up doors.
Yeah. There's a side door that might be open as well. You might want to try that, but you can call too. People call in. Yeah.
Right.
All right. I would tell you first of all, but sometimes cats get in that door, so I tell people. Yeah. The side door should work. All right. It's an ancient thing. Kill the dudes, castrate the dudes, disenfranchise the dudes, keep the women. And like I say, in development work, the United Nations, there's a standard protocol. There's a standard trope of empowering women. And make no mistake, men are on some bullshit. Men are corrupt, sexual, exploitive, and additionally, this ain't like a boo-hoo parade for men. It's just a matter of recognizing what the game is. So because men have been that way, and men continue to be that way, then it gives a certain amount of legitimacy within a platform that only empowers women, or that only empowers, only addresses women, or only supports women, or only invests within women. And then when it comes to communities of different cultures or ethnicities that are perceived as oppressed, well, men can fend for themselves. We'll focus on the women and the children. So again, there's legit reason for that, but it's a matter of understanding additional reason why that is. So that's one thing, and that's applicable to the diversity game here on this continent as well, where when institution, I won't even categorize this. I'll just say institutions have a tendency of hiring and maintaining either as an HR leader, manager, or as a diversity manager, or whatever the position of that institution's position of in the administration when it pertains to diversity tends to be a woman tends to be hired in that position, and I don't fault that. I'm not. It's not hating on women. So that's one thing. And to be honest, like you can like tell the type of institution it is by the ethnicity of the woman who is in that position. If she's African, if she's Asian, if she's Middle Eastern, if she's Latina, and additionally, and that's love and peace to everybody. Love and peace to all Africans. Love and peace to all Latinas and Latinos. Love and peace to all Mediterraneans. Love and peace to all Middle Easterners. Love and peace to all Asians. Love and peace to all brethren of the earth. But my point is that you can discern what the institution's politics are and what the strategy is, based upon the person who's put into the position of diversity, whatever the equivalent of that is. It's almost similar to discerning a person's politics based upon who the landscapers are. Again, same kind of ethnic type of categorization, but that might seem like racist, stereotypical kind of BS kind of conjecture, but it was actually this is that worked. Ha! I see you, bro. You got your results.
I know. I done had so many problems with getting into certain places because of the
So
extra stuff.
What do they say to you about those joints?
It was all the way cool to come off in there.
I'm saying, but those other places, like what kind of static
like,
you get?
You know, you go to pick up something, then they give you a sign, they can't. The hours change. But
so they don't deal with you directly. They just got signs that way,
right.
And you got to have like the inroads to get like connect with somebody.
I've been wasting my time to go pick something up.
Yeah.
Just like UPS, no indicator that they closed early, but they didn't say that they closed earlier than others.
The side door. Yeah, bro, the side door. You might find the side door open.
Side door. Yeah. On the side right here.
Right here, over here.
Through the grass right here. Go to the right, then it's gonna be wide open. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I just been so frustrated, man, with trying to get things taken care of.
Yeah.
I'm ordering all this stuff online, so
yeah.
I was to the point where, damn, I picked it up 2 days later. Why can't I access these buildings?
Yeah.
It ain't even that serious.
Yeah. So, and to be honest, like sometimes cats get in through that door, so I don't want to tell cats how you can't get in. But like, hold up, they just got in. But I know.
It's just crazy where they got it set up because you walk in there. And then now they got some signage, call this number to gain access to the door.
So did you have to call when you were at that door?
No.
It was open or whatever?
Right.
Okay, all right.
That's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
Just tell me, like right there on the front, go to the west wing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So, cats got their game on doing things or whatever else, but you got your joint though.
Nice, man.
All right, bro. Most definitely. You're the same as well. Love and peace.
Happy.
All that, bro. All that. Righteous.
Right.
So I was talking about the stereotypical kind of like conclusion about the institution's politics based upon the ethnicity or the demographic of the person, place. People can call me on that. My point is just to share it as like for consideration and welcome to talk about it. But that's just fun, and that's not hating on anything. It's just recognizing what the actuality is. Now, I am getting to a point with this though, and with that said and with that understood, like. When an institution hires a woman of African ancestry, then there's certain like it's just logical. There's certain qualities, characteristics that the institution is emphasizing, prioritizing in that type of hire. And yes, institutions are going to have their Title IX or whatever it is, spiel about qualifications and everything else at the ready, and occasionally there may be a certain amount of like a significant distance or a significant difference in terms of like credentials, and additionally hiring from within, institutional affiliation additionally. But very often It's a matter of like, whoa, at this moment, what our priority is, we've got some things working with a certain type of community. We need somebody who's going to be effective in addressing these issues, and so that's what it is. So when we talk about a woman of African ancestry, I'm getting to the point now, and this is where it's challenging. I'll put it like this: there's a certain tendency, and this is part of the antiquated nature of America's diversity game, and I'm actually sharing this as in the interest of helping. That's everything I do. Sometimes it might be increasingly evident, sometimes it might be increasingly direct and immediate. Sometimes it may take some doing to like process and to understand like actually what's intended. And even when that's intended, I don't know everything. How about that? I ain't omniscient. I do know a lot of things, and I'm honest about a lot of things, way honest, further than a lot of people. And so I do my best to like share what's relevant, share what's priority, share what's productive, and that's my purpose for sharing this. So here we go. Now, America's diversity game is way out of shape. I've just described myself previously as a diversity fitness coach. America's diversity is way out of shape, and has gotten to be way out of shape, just like anything else, because it can afford to be out of shape. You can just throw money at something and be like, oh, here it is. Now, be nice and play happy, or the other way around, whatever. And it has been able to afford not actually putting in work, going through the exercises of actually being diverse, being pluralistic, being actually multicultural, genuinely multicultural. And paying heed to that. Just like, oh, we'll give this, that, and the other. Now they have a budget, they can do what they want. Blah, blah, blah. We have plenty of money. It doesn't matter. That game don't work at this point. The perceived pandemic is evidence of that. But even it goes further than that. I have to wrap up soon now. The idea of just throwing money at something and quieting people because of the money being thrown at it, even at the rebels, that is not sufficient. That it's an antiquated game, and I don't advocate that type of mentality of like just making judgments on surface level things. I say that when I talk about the hiring of diversity officers or the hiring of landscapers, whatever else, being as an indicator of people's politics, I don't subscribe. I don't advocate that. I don't espouse that. But I'm saying that that's how people think in this land, and so you can make discernments very, very with a certain degree of accuracy, because that is how a lot of people on this continent think. A lot of people, particularly in the hierarchies of, just think about in terms of like statistics and demographics. And so what I'm about to share is along those lines. When things like police brutality happen, when things like racial institutional discrimination get called out, and there gets some steam behind it, and there gets some like momentum, cats start to get on board, and even conventional institutions start to like say, oh, we've got to address this because our constituency is not letting it go. Then there need to be some concessions. There need to be some valves that are opened to let off some of that steam. I've got MLK's "I Have a Dream" in the back of my mind when I'm sharing that. And so one of those ways, one of those valves, is initially hiring a woman to be in the diversity, particularly a woman of African ancestry, to be in that diversity position. So now you can say to the community, oh, look, we've hired a woman, she's black, and so now you've got to let us go. We've got to call it even. What is it called? Bygones. That's a Ally McBeal quote. Let it go. We got a black woman on the job. So now if you got a problem with us, take it up with her. And you know you can't say too much to her because you know how you done black women wrong in it as well. So you better be careful what you say to her. And she's most likely got a very legit credentials. She knows her stuff academically, but also she probably has a wee bit of street credibility as well, or at least at the grassroots level, to kind of keep it grounded because that's the nature of it. So that's been like the go-to thing, the safe thing for institutions to do. hire a black woman, put her in a black American, put her in the and that sounds very pejorative or condescending or objectifying, but that's the way the institutions think. So anyways, all right, hire her and give her a position in the administration on diversity, this and the other, and now that quiets people up. And people's righteous game ain't that strong, ain't that disciplined to get much further than that, than that apparatus. So that's been the game. That's been the diversity game. And it's been effective for the past quarter of a century. It becomes increasingly the case. And actually, well, so that's been the quieting thing. And that quiets black men, because black men can't say too much about black women, because black men have done black women wrong too long. All right. And then at that point it's just a matter of who gets the position, who amongst the black women get the position, which and then same thing with the black men in the initial stages, having a political machine around the black women, because again she has connections with the community, with institutions, and additionally, so now there's people and even men who get on her train. Let me be careful about that. Get on her boat or on her team, on her political machine, because she has some cachet, because the institution gives her some leeway in making recommendations and this and the other. So now she's got a political machine, and it works the same way as I described before. Now that works for a while, because again, particularly because money, throw it at people and quiet up, and then when voices raise, here's the melanated face to quiet it down, and that's how the game. That's the diversity game. It works effectively for the past quarter of a century, particularly on this continent. I repeat myself a lot. It's also how I'm taught, because if you look at the teachings, there's a lot of repetition. So I intrinsically do it, even when I know I'm doing it. It's part of the nature. So, anyways, getting ready to wrap this up. Getting to the point here. Now, in that process, in the past quarter of a century, when this has been increasingly done, this is increasingly the paradigm. This is how the game works. Guess what? Institutions find out, black women, they kind of legit. They know how to do things. They got some talents, That's a beautiful thing, because black women are beautiful, holy, sacred, and so it's not just a matter of having some quiet up face to people. Like, wait, hold up. Women can do things, and black women can do things, particularly, and not just at the domestic level. How about this? Black women in the room when negotiating with multinational corporations, multilateral negotiations. We can look at secretaries of state. We can look at White Houses, and additionally, as an example of this. And one of the things that white men learn through the centuries, but even at this most recent corporate generation level, is the ability of black women shutting things down. There's like no other on earth, shutting it down. That's at the domestic level here in the United States, particularly because few other than Native women who can shut things down like a black woman. Calling upon the legacy of slavery, the Middle Passage, to today. So when the other side of the negotiation of the conflict or whatever sees a black woman on the other side, they're like, oh, wait up, we got to slow up now, because ain't no thing for her to shut it down. And what does shut it down mean? That's a tutorial. This is a grad level kind of course right now, so that's a tutorial thing right now. The black woman, like no other on earth, when it comes to internationally, because around the earth there's colorism. around the earth, the darker one is, the further devalued one is, unless one is on African soil. Perhaps a little bit lightweight, less amongst native brethren, but particularly amidst the Eastern Hemisphere, severe colorism. So when an American corporation is dealing with other corporations and just wants to affect the consciousness, affect the concentration, maybe get a rise and cause disruption or whatever, a black woman on the team, just being in the room, maybe even saying something, that's going to challenge the other side to a certain extent. And so corporations learn this. And corporations and nations, the U.S. government learns this and utilizes that to advantage, because there's nothing on earth that shuts down like a black woman. I should rephrase that, because that could be taken in different ways. There's nothing on earth that can shut things down like a black woman shuts things down, and that complements very well the white man's tendency of overthinking and building things up too much, and so that kind of combination has been tenacious, particularly within the past half century, and particularly the past quarter century. Now, all that being said, it's antiquated, it's passé, it's that word that starts with an O, obsolete, because the world has caught on. The world has caught on to the game. The world is flexing the game. And black women on this continent, after eating off of masses' plate so much and eating the dainties off masses' plate so much, black American women can't shut it down like black American women used to be able to do so.
I know, after I went in there without my face mask.
Black American women can't shut it down like black American women used to be able to do. And that ain't no type of hate towards black American women. It's just a statement of fact for the benefit of black American women and for the benefit of all people. It's stating facts. Can't shut it down like it used to. The game don't work the same way. The same tropes of guilt and additionally that work in the United States historically don't work to the same degree and are becoming less and less effective. The new African women coming on board from Jamaica, from Nigeria, from Ghana, and additionally, so that trope of shutting it down, black American women ain't the only black women on earth that do it, and the world knows that. China knows that. Europe knows that. Arabia knows that. Israel knows that. India knows that. So that's one thing. Black American women ain't got a corner on the market. Now, black American women can shut things down amongst African women, particularly when flexing the Middle Passage reference, because that's still relevant. That's still weighty, and there. But guess what? When black Americans eat so much off the fat that massa had been producing on this land, on native land, and you got to give respect for native women too. When black Americans have eaten the fat so much off this land, that Middle Passage trope as a guilt trip don't work like it used to be able to. So they can't shut it down the same way. So that trope of addressing the angst and aggression and that valve, that release valve to get off that steam by putting a black woman in the position, or hiring a black woman, that again, putting is very objective and demeaning. Hiring a black woman, placing a black woman, giving a black woman that position, it don't work like it was, and it's getting less and less. So all that's the point I'm saying. That's the statement that I'm sharing in this second post. That's the difficulty that I have in sharing, because it's with love. It's do love and respect for black women. Do love and respect for black women, black American women. Do love and respect for all women. Do love and respect for all women. I'm saying it with a straight face. So, this is the actuality, and it's a different game. The world is on it, and the statement that I have to say is actually when black women attempt that kind of strategy, that kind of game, black women are out of pocket. That's a statement. So that's what it is. Again, love and respect. Do love and respect. And I've done women wrong. I've done black women wrong. So I ain't even double talking that. But it's to the point where even amidst the things that I've done wrong and made amends for and atoned for at the best I can, up through this day, with all that, there's still appropriateness, there's still necessity, there's still even certain priority in me saying that, so that we can do better. Black women can do better, black men can do better, all men can do better, all women can do better. My nose itches and I ain't rubbing it. So you can read my facial features all you like. You can influence my facial features all you like. Google and your Snapshot, chop, whatever. Anyways, that's what I got to share. Now, part of doing better is discipline, ethics, getting to the roots of what true diversity is like, and true diversity basically goes into pluralism, balance, learning the wisdom from the different traditions of the earth, and adhering to the wisdom when particularly when wanting to interact with the people of the different traditions of the earth, finding the middle path of cooperation accordingly, rather than just jumping on board the biggest oppressor and eating off the fat crumbs that the oppressor chops off occasionally. So that's a pluralism game. And to like get in a tutorial on the pluralism game, I don't mean to be talking down to nobody. I'm sitting on the ground. How about that? To get a tutorial, like you can just reference all the things I've shared up to this day on pluralism. So that's the second joint. Now we get into the multiple joints. And again, I am wrapping this up. I ain't going to get too much in the multiple joints. But I'm just addressing it because I mentioned it. Multiple joints. All right, so basically I was having a conversation with uncle yesterday at the village. He was talking about some things that was happening. He visited the city center here, the public square. I said like the damage is much less than what was reported in the media that he sees. But he said that there was some damage. So anyways, what I mentioned to him in our conversation yesterday was the new normal, what we can expect that to be. Because even with things like subsiding at the moment, first of all, we're like almost legit in the summer, the northern summer, and there's little sign of like lockdown completely evaporating. So we can expect, like, when the autumn arrives, God willing, when the autumn arrives, that similar precautions, right? The side door might be open. The side door, I think that door is closed. Okay. I am always right, and the only thing I like better than being right is being corrected. So in the meanwhile, what I do is talk about the new normal. So even with things subsiding, by the time people get like safe, feel safe, whatever, it's about getting prepared for another round, and particularly as a preventive measure. So even when things ain't like hectic or chaotic or pandemic situations, it's a matter of avoiding that and governments, societies, institutions. The side door. USPS, I think they're closed. Yeah, okay. Cheers. There's the correction. And the wind in my eye. A wee bit of dust. And I ain't gonna wipe because it ain't the best. They got face masks for the eyes. They actually do. There's eye guards. right? So, the new normal. We can anticipate governments, institutions taking precautions from even allowing a pandemic that was the outside, allowing a pandemic to reemerge, and thus taking pre-lockdown kind of measures or preliminary preventive lockdown measures, and that's all the way through winter until next spring, and that's basically next year. So does that mean what does that mean for universities and other big institutions that have large populations? That remains to be seen, and that's part of what we can consider with this new normal. But we can recognize that it is a new normal, because even next year with this subsiding, there's still like this is in people's memories, and so there's like for years to come, it's like always being mindful of like preventing that. And it's sadly it's a big ask, or it's a big leap to expect people to change people's hygienic behavior categorically, like comprehensively, and so that means like considerable measures. And so when that means considerable measures, we already see how divisive these measures are within society, not just ethnically, religiously, and culturally and linguistically, but socioeconomically and medically. Focusing on socioeconomically, we can recognize that even without it being the official policy, without it being the formal policy, we can there's the de jure and there's the de facto. We can recognize de facto apartheid emerging within society between the haves and the have-nots, quote unquote, those with material riches and those with spiritual riches. How about that? Across the racial divides and everything else. But basically, those who are materially rich, basically becoming entrenched and enclosed within barricades, like collective barricades, whether it's gated communities, and additionally, but basically establishing increasingly fortified enclaves of residence, of work, and additionally beyond what at this moment, and being as removed from the general population as possible, and living within very conditioned, or I should say, very regulated conditions. Everybody being vaccinated, everybody adhering to certain protocols of face masks, everybody being subject to inspection in terms of maybe even housing and like cleanliness, hygiene inspection, maybe random searches, random inspections of hands and contamination, whether the person's hands have been washed, random evaluation of temperature as is already being done, and additionally, and everybody subscribing to that type of treatment because that's part of the cost, or that's part of the prerequisite of gaining access to that type of thing. And then also in gaining access, getting the privileges with that access, the connections, the contracts, and everything else that comes with that. And any worker who's given a job there, maybe they have to live in some kind of similarly regulated enclave but nicer amenities, and having controlled transportation back and forth to that, like servants' quarters, except it's like servants' enclaves, collective servants' enclaves, with commuting, special commuter trams and things like that, private, that are organized between that, or having other things that it would be it seemed to be less lucrative, or not even lucrative, but less prudent to make such employment available to like new hires. Like there's a vested interest in the hires being like long-term, so that involves long-term contracts, but those long-term contracts also involve like behavioral stipulations of like, got to do this, got to do that, got to do this, got to be subject to this and that and the other. So that's one thing that can be anticipated. This is not a prognostication. This is just a matter of articulating what people's thinking at this moment may be, and thus what people's plannings are, and then what people's intentionalities may be. And then on the other side, there's cats who are just like free, like this is a wake up call to like get away from dependency on the system, get away from dependency on doctors, get away from dependency on all the institutions that are affiliated or that are entrenched within Western medicine, and additionally, and so that's one thing, and that's kind of like where the other apartheid that I've been mentioning, which is the medical compliant and the medical independent. And again, they ain't the best terms, they ain't the most accurate or the most evenly kind of like connotation wise terms, but that's what that's what I share at the moment. But anyways, the actualities of this are at this moment. I mean, we're seeing because Western society, particularly on this continent, is significantly entrenched. I'm using that word a lot. Invested or enveloped in the service industry as an economic generator. And it's not even an economic generator, it's an economic facilitator, probably is further accurate, because it employs a lot of people. Just because factory jobs and other methods in agriculture, there's less need of, there's less demand, and actually there's also less willingness to do that as well, particularly amongst democratically educated citizenry. So people get service jobs, and service jobs, as we see, are amongst the first to get like redundant or recognized as non-priority when shit hits the fan. So that has significant implications in terms of society in the next few generations. How societies plan and accommodate a workforce that's comparatively untrained, but expecting to live a middle class lifestyle, and have access to education and institutions for social upward mobility. These are part of the things that keep society in order, and that's the implication. So it's not just a matter of like appeasing. Like, this is a fundamental thing, a foundational thing, a need that society has, that is at this moment not being answered in a way that's made readily available, to my knowledge, by convention or through convention. So that's one of the things that convention is challenged with at the moment, and it's a serious thing, because in answering that, the previous boundaries and borders and apartheid that's been significantly ethnic and religious based, the new answers need to be increasingly honest and genuine. I don't want to utilize the word inclusive, but balanced and accepting of people of different ethnicities and different religions, because they're people from the entire spectrum of class. They're people in each religion, and they're people in each ethnicity. I'll say it this way: all ethnicities, major ethnicities, and all major religions exist along the totality of the socioeconomic spectrum, and also the totality of the medically compliant spectrum. So the new like borders, the new like pillars, the new like walls of apartheid that society has to construct at this point have to be girded in something other than the race-based and the religious-based apartheid that historically is the case. So that's a fundamental challenge for today's conventional authority. But that's part of the necessity. Something else along these lines. Also, and it gets no further proximate, no further closer than exactly where I am at a university, because universities, as I mentioned before, are the bastion, the stronghold of class apartheid in Western society at this point, and actually in global society. And so this is like where the crux of where the answer is manifested. And it's exactly immediate because, universities, as powerful and as formidable as universities are, first of all, universities don't have the stranglehold on power in the global sense. Universities are extremely influential, but universities don't have a stronghold, don't have the stranglehold, don't have like the preponderance. Religion still plays along. Tribes still play a strong role in leadership. The class, the land holdings, and additionally, all those play significant roles. Now, that being said, the other thing also is that universities are also extremely reliant upon students, upon having a student population, a student body, and student bodies literally in place, in physics, or in physicality, because there's a lot of learning that goes on, and the learning is beautiful and fantastic and miraculous, but let's be honest, a lot of what a university is a country club. It's a vacation spot. And one of the strongest selling points of the university is sex. As wrongful as that is, and as difficult as that may be for me to articulate, that's one of the strong selling points. And guess what? If cats ain't in physicality, ain't on campus, and ain't mixing in the courtyards to be courting, the sex ain't it. And that's not a selling point. I'm not advocating that. I'm just talking about what the actualities are, what the motivations for students to pay $500,000 to go to university. All right, so that's one of the dire challenges that universities are experiencing at this moment, because commuting learning. Okay, sure, yeah, you can get the information, but that's not the experience. That's not the university experience. That's not even half the university experience. And so universities have to answer, how are we going to make universities enticing, encouraging? Because otherwise, cats are going to go traveling if traveling is available one way or another. Cats are going to go work. Cats will just like find the books and do their own learning. Why pay $500,000 when that $500,000 could be pocketed? Maybe spend a couple G's and get the books and read the books oneself, and then maybe if necessary, like spend like a 10 G's or whatever for a tutor, and share that with other students. So I've already shared that notion of like a cooperative education thing from kindergarten to university level. But anyways, that's another story. The point is, like, universities got to answer that question. And commuting might work. Commuting learning might work in like as a temporary solution for this past semester. It might work for the autumn semester. But next year's high school seniors, we're looking at university applications. They may fill out the applications. They may pay the application fees and do everything else. But when it comes to actually making a decision for next fall, a year and a half from now, if they see that universities are shut down and don't have students on campus, that don't bode well. So the question's got to be answered in a satisfactory way. And one thing might be like still doing the commuting learning, and then having like clubs, local clubs, because universities already have satellite campuses, campi, in select cities. That could be a thing, although that takes some doing. And it might not even be like a formal campus, a satellite campus. It might be just like a club, or like a satellite type of operations, or a center or something like that, where it might just be like an administrative head in an office, but coordinates activities and rents facilities and things like that, so students can socialize and interact with each other. Maybe doing it with other colleges as well, just to have some kind of social atmosphere. And it might be increasingly clubbish and based upon like the same compatibility factors of other universities, depending on, and that's something for major metropolitan areas where the student population is increasingly larger. But even then, that seems less plausible. And there's no substitute for in-person. So there it is. That's the multiple thing. And on my personal journey, the search for a wife continues. My search for a wife continues. I've recognized that, she's got to be in person. I can't doing the online thing. In person, and she's got to be on my petition. Not my petition, but on the petition that I sign on to. So that shows certain commitment to the things that I'm committed to as well. It's not a commitment to me; it's a commitment to the things I'm committed to, because I've recognized I have a certain amount of hubris, and a certain amount of it is purposeful, because I've recognized the phallic, egotistical presumption of being able to change a woman's mind or influence a woman to believe in a similar way as myself. I have a certain tendency of my ability to do that, although again that's very hubris and egotistical and chauvinistic, whatever else. But my point is, whoever my wife is, God willing, whoever my wife is, God willing that I am married, she's going to change. She's going to change in some significant way, because that's just part of the life that I live. And there are extremely few people that I know of that actually live in a proximate way as myself. There are a lot of people who live close and who can spend some time here, but in terms of living day in and day out like I do, it takes some change, it takes some doing. And simultaneously, a woman needs to change me, and show me how to be increasingly of the earth, of the world, amongst people, and to care about what people think. And additionally, I care about people, but I've learned a lot about people's BS, and so I'm comparatively indifferent in how I present myself. And actually, in many ways, I'm very intentional in the kind of lackadaisical, haphazard way I present myself, because if I present myself in a polished way, first of all, that's implausible, because people are accustomed to Hollywood special effects, and that's not how prophets roll. So that's one thing. The other thing also is that when a cat does offer himself in that way, polished, shiny, guess what? Martyrdom, because cats are he's awesome, and throw him up on a pedestal, or her up on a pedestal. Don't actually do what he's doing. Don't listen to what he's saying, but worship him. And I'm not saying cats should or I want or anything like that. I'm actually explaining why I don't do that, and why. Anyway, that's one of the reasons why I am the way I am, because I am comparatively indifferent towards people. I share what I share. For those who are ready to receive it, they got it, and they respond accordingly. The point is not to encourage people, to convince people to have confidence with me based upon the facade, based upon the exterior. Instead, it's a matter of sharing the light, right? And then when people see me sharing the light, then they have increased amount of patience to get beyond all the facade and everything else like that, and be like, he's in disguise. Let's stick around, see what else he got going on. And the other thing also is I work with cats who are self-starters. That's how I am, and that's all I can teach. I tell cats, don't follow me, don't listen to what I do, don't adhere to what I do. If I say something that resonates, all right, cool, work with that. If you want to hear further, all right, cool, work with that. If you want to build further, side door should be open.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Let's work together and cooperate. Let's roll. But I don't have sheep. I'm not a shepherd. I'm a pachyderm, and we roll in packs. We're not predatory, so we don't subordinate others to what we're doing. So that's how we roll. For better or worse, that's how it is, and that's how I work with approaching and finding a wife, is in a similar way. Now there is an increased propensity of me being increasing amount of a leader and providing additional amount of guidance in communicating with a prospective wife, my prospective wife. But I'm less presumptuous or entrenched when it comes to those fantasies, because that's a different nature of a dance. But yeah, she's got to at least show some kind of commitment to the same things I'm committed about, and that's part of the petition of independence for doing direct village-to-village trade. That's a very basic thing. Then the next joint is the cooperation compact, being willing to contribute, commit 1% of the woman's monthly income to the co-op, not to me, but to the co-op, for the shared cause. The side door over here might be open if you go around the building. You're welcome. So that's if a woman is unwilling to provide that, then she's uninterested in what I'm about. It's only when she is willing to kind of provide that commitment, not even kind of, when she is willing to provide that kind of commitment, that she's showing an interest, a dutiful interest in what I share, and then also the proclamation of pluralism and everything else that I share. It's just a growing. It's an ascending kind of communication, connection, cooperation, and commitment. And what that also helps me do is because I've said this before, I fall in love with women very easily, and I've disciplined that, and I quell that kind of propensity. But when I am single and looking for a wife, it's easy for me to be enamored by another woman, and so then the question becomes, how much of an effort do I make, knowing that any woman is most likely that I'm going to have to make an effort to kind of encourage her to walk with me. So once I'm enamored, the question is, all right, so how much of an effort do I stop the woman right now who's walking by, and like find some kind of creative thing to say. And additionally, I've already let go of poetry until I'm engaged, so that's less of an option. But it can be staggering to kind of go through that every time I'm outside and I see an attractive woman who seems to be single, available, and even perhaps interested in talking at least. So it's very challenging. So what I recognize is that I can focus. I'm reverting back to my comfort zone, where I'm comfortable, which is just focusing on my work, doing the petition, doing the community building, doing the pluralism things with the Sona Ashram and Mélangé Ethos Institute, Café Mélangé, and additionally, and sharing the petition with anybody and everybody, particularly those who communicate an interest. And if there's a woman and at this point, like I don't have to I can be increasingly disciplined and reserved in my tendency towards being enamored. So rather than just being staggered by that contemplation, just if she's interested in the petition, share the petition. If she signs and she's interested in the co-op, share the co-op. And then if she's involved in there's communication along those lines, then there's the propensity of having a conversation accordingly in terms of relationship, and particularly marriage, because boyfriend girlfriend is a plaything, and I'm not at the plaything level at this point. So if it gets to that point of talking about relationship and marriage, then there it is at that point. But if she's uninterested in the petition, uninterested in the co-op, there's the answer right there. And it's not a matter of laboring through it or it is what it is. So that helps me and how to discern on how to progress. So I'm back in my comfort zone. Now it ain't easy there, because even then there's still cause for being disciplined continually and increasingly, but I'm mentally I'm reserved. I'm back into this comfort zone. I just petition. This is what I'm about. What do you think? Oh, okay. Here's co-op. What do you think? This is what I'm about. Okay. Here's pluralism proclamation. This is what I'm about. This is fundamental. This is easy stuff. It doesn't even get into the religiosity and everything else that I'm about. So these are just the first steps. If you ain't with this at this moment, all right, cool. That's nice. Cheers. So that's not a dismissive cheers. That's genuine cheers. That's what I got to share. That's what we got for the moment. So we can see if this is going to upload in the amount of battery hours that we got, which is probably about half an hour. Actually, I don't know. Not even that. I'm gonna work on storytelling for the next time. And think of something that corresponds with the topic that I have to share. As a closing joint, I'll share the. I'm not gonna share that. Yeah, I should wrap this up because we're at battery yet. So we'll work on that for next time. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom. Mir, Zaijian, adios, take your chakras, Isempina Asamu, Kilo Fred. One love and peace, happiness and liberation.